Ever feel like you're just invisible? I know I did. Growing up, I was the backdrop to my family's big picture, always standing a step behind. My parents, Mark and Alice, were busy with their high-profile jobs, both chasing after success like it was a prize they could never reach. Mark, a corporate lawyer, spent more time in boardrooms than in our living room. Alice, a senior executive at a major marketing firm, was always away, handling deals, attending galas, and climbing the corporate ladder. Then there was Lily, my older sister, the shining star, the golden child. She was the prodigy, the one who could do no wrong. Every accomplishment she had was celebrated like a national holiday. Straight A's, captain of the soccer team, president of the student council. At family dinners, it was always about Lily. The stories about her achievements hung in the air like smoke, and there I was, sitting quietly, hoping to disappear into my plate of food. I tried to keep up, I really did, but everything felt like a race I could never finish. School was brutal. I was always smaller than the other kids, an easy target for bullies. Jason, the biggest jerk in my class, would push me into lockers, call me names, and humiliate me in front of everyone. I remember the time in 5th grade when they locked me in the janitor's closet for what felt like hours. I screamed and banged on the door, hoping someone would hear me, but no one did. The janitor finally found me, shaking, my eyes red from crying. It wasn't much better at home. My parents? They weren't exactly warm. Mark and Alice had high expectations. Grades. If I didn't get straight A's, it was like I wasn't even part of the family. They'd punish me by locking me in my room, hours or even entire weekends. No phone, no TV, nothing. And don't even get me started on the bucket they'd leave for me when I couldn't leave the room to use the bathroom. It was like I was invisible to them until I wasn't good enough. Then came that one night when everything shattered. I was around 12 when Mark found out Alice had been cheating on him. The fight that night, God, the yelling. I remember creeping to the top of the stairs to listen. It wasn't supposed to be like this. How could you do this to us? To the kids? Mark shouted. Alice snapped back, "You're never home." What did you expect from me? They didn't even know I was there. And in that moment, I felt like the rug had been pulled out from under me. Everything felt fake. The next morning, everything seemed normal again, but it wasn't. Alice became colder, more distant. Mark buried himself even deeper into work, and I was left in the middle, invisible as ever. By the time high school rolled around, I'd perfected the art of being unnoticed. I joined the debate team, hoping it would give me a voice, but that never happened. I was too nervous to speak in front of people. When I finally did get a chance to speak at a competition, I froze. The audience laughed, and that laugh stuck with me, like a scar I couldn't shake. Still, I pushed through. I scraped by with decent enough grades to apply to college, thinking it might be my escape. My parents pushed me toward business, even though I had no interest in it. It was the only way to secure your future, they said. But what did I know? I just went along with it, because that's what you do when you're trying to avoid being the family disappointment. I wasn't going to be like Lily, the perfect one. I just wanted out. I was accepted into a state school, a few hours from home. It wasn't prestigious like Lily's Ivy League college, but it was mine. Or so I thought. College wasn't the fresh start I imagined. It felt more like high school, more pressure, more isolation. I spent most of my time in my dorm, studying alone, playing video games to escape. Alex, my roommate, was a great guy, outgoing and popular, but I couldn't join his world. I stayed in my corner while he partied with friends. One night, Alex dragged me to a party. "You need to get out of here, man. Come on, it'll be fun." I agreed reluctantly, thinking it would help me feel less lonely. The party was loud, chaotic, nothing I was used to. I found a quiet spot, nursing a drink, trying not to feel overwhelmed. That's when I met Sarah. She was different, quiet, shy, just like me. We clicked instantly. For the first time in a long time, I felt like someone understood me. We hung out for hours, talking about everything and nothing. She gave me her number before I left, and we started hanging out regularly. But then things started to slip. My grades tanked. I couldn't keep up with the pressure, and my parents were furious. They blamed Sarah, saying she was a distraction. They even threatened to cut off my tuition if I didn't break up with her. I was crushed. She was the only person who made me feel like I mattered, but I couldn't afford to lose my future. I went home that weekend, hoping to reason with my parents, explain that Sarah wasn't the problem. But they didn't care. "You're not leaving this house until you break up with her," my dad said. They locked me in my room for the weekend, just like when I was a kid. When they finally let me out, I was broken. I called Sarah and told her we couldn't see each other anymore. Her voice, shaky and hurt, still haunts me. I lost her, and in some ways, I lost myself too. After breaking up with Sarah, it felt like the floor had fallen out from under me. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think straight. I wandered around for days and days, the weight of what I'd just done hanging over me. I felt empty, like I was carrying a 1,000-pound burden I couldn't escape. For the first time, it wasn't just my grades slipping or my parents' endless expectations crushing me. It was something deeper. I had lost someone who actually made me feel like I was worth something. And my parents? They had no clue how much they'd torn me apart. They didn't see the wreckage they'd left in their wake. All they saw was that I was doing better focusing on my schoolwork, now that Sarah was out of the picture. But what good was school when I was dying inside? What good was anything when the one person who had ever cared about me was gone? I kept my head down at university. I still didn't fit in. It was like I was just passing through life, but I wasn't really living it. I stayed isolated, pushed away anyone who even remotely showed interest in me. My roommate Alex tried, but how could I explain the weight of my loneliness? How could I tell him that I was drowning when all he could see was me coasting through college? Then came that night, the night that would change everything. I was sitting in the library trying to finish an assignment that didn't even matter to me anymore when I heard my phone buzz. I picked it up, and it was a message from my mom. "We're so proud of you for finally getting your grades up. Keep it up. But you're still disappointing us." That's all it said. Nothing more, nothing less. It was like a slap in the face, cold and sharp. It wasn't even directed at me directly. It was the hollow, mechanical tone that came through. No love, no care, just expectations, just demands. I stared at the message for what felt like an eternity, feeling the familiar sting in my chest. It was like I had always been that child, the one who never could do enough. I had tried to be invisible, but they saw me. They saw my failures, my mistakes, and they didn't love me anyway. I put my phone down. The tears came, hot and unstoppable. I tried to hold them back, but it was no use. I wanted to scream at them for how they had broken me, how they had turned me into this shell of a person, living just to fulfill their expectations. And then, in that moment, a thought hit me. A terrifying, exhilarating thought. What if I didn't have to live this way anymore? I had been living in their shadow for so long that I had forgotten what it felt like to be my own person. But that night, I realized something. I had a choice. I didn't have to keep suffering. I didn't have to let their demands define me. The weight of my past, the weight of their expectations, didn't have to be mine to carry anymore. The next few weeks were a blur. I did what I could to push through the sadness, though it was never really gone. I still went to class, still did the assignments, still held on to that faint hope that one day I might find a way out of this mess. But then, a few weeks later, I met her. Her name was Emily, and she was nothing like anyone I'd ever known. She was confident, bright, and full of life, everything I wasn't. But somehow, she saw something in me. She saw beyond the quiet, shy guy who never spoke up. And for the first time in a long while, I felt seen. It was a random encounter at a campus event, one of those events you go to because you feel obligated, even though you'd rather be doing literally anything else. But as soon as I saw her, something changed. It was like the world stopped for a moment. She was sitting alone, reading a book, and without thinking, I walked over and started talking to her. It was awkward at first, but she was kind, laughing at my jokes, asking me questions, making me feel like I wasn't invisible for once. We spent the rest of the evening talking, and somehow I found myself opening up to her, talking about Sarah, about my parents, about how I'd been trying to escape a life I never wanted. She listened, and in that moment, I felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to move on. Maybe there was someone out there who understood what I was going through. Over the next few months, Emily and I grew closer. She helped me with my homework, cheered me up when I felt low, and made me laugh even when I felt like the world was falling apart. I started to realize that I was beginning to feel something again. Something more than the emptiness I'd been carrying for so long. It was like I was finally starting to breathe again. But of course, nothing good ever lasts in my life. My parents found out about Emily, and like they always did, they ruined it. They called me one evening, demanding to know who she was and why I was wasting my time on her. "You should be focusing on your future, not on some girl," my dad said, his voice cold and demanding, like he always was. I tried to explain to them that she was important to me, that she was the only person who understood me, but they wouldn't listen. They told me that if I didn't cut ties with her, they would cut me off financially. No more tuition, no more help, no more anything. It felt like a gut punch. They were willing to take everything away from me, everything I had worked so hard for, just because they didn't approve of my choice of a friend. I couldn't do it. I couldn't lose her. She was the only thing that was keeping me from completely falling apart. So, I made a choice. I told Emily the truth, the whole truth. I told her that my parents wanted me to cut ties with her, that they didn't approve of our friendship. Her face fell, and I saw the hurt in her eyes. It was the last thing I wanted to do, but I had no choice. I couldn't afford to lose everything. And with that, my life took another turn. The loneliness returned, more suffocating than before. I had lost Sarah, and now I was losing Emily too. My world was spinning, and I felt like I had no anchor. I stayed in that lonely space for what felt like forever. I kept going through the motions, going to class, doing my work, but nothing ever felt real. It was like I was living in a haze. Then one night, it all came crashing down. I was at my lowest point, curled up in my dorm room, trying to ignore the suffocating feelings that were crawling up my throat. And that's when it happened. I got a call from home. My mom's voice, shaking, broke through the silence. "We're proud of you," she said, her tone heavy with something I couldn't place. "We're proud of what you've accomplished. But there's still so much more you could do if you just focus on what really matters." I had enough. It was time. I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need to be the person they wanted me to be. I think that was the moment everything finally broke. My parents didn't even realize what they were doing to me. To them, it was all about control over my future, over who I was, over what I became. But it was never about me. It had always been about their expectations, their image of perfection. They wanted me to follow the path they'd mapped out for me. And if I didn't, I was nothing. That phone call from my mom, the one where she told me how proud they were, felt like a slap in the face. She thought I had succeeded. But what she didn't know was that I had been living my life on autopilot. I wasn't making decisions for myself. I wasn't living for myself. I had been trying to be what they wanted me to be, and it wasn't working. I was suffocating. I couldn't do it anymore. The weight of their expectations had always been so heavy on me, but now it felt like I had been carrying it alone for too long. I was 19, not 10. I wasn't their project to mold. But in that moment, it was clear to me I had been living for their approval, even though it never felt like enough. And Emily had been the first person to show me what it meant to live for myself. That night, after the call, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let them control my life anymore. I wasn't going to keep hiding who I really was, who I really wanted to be. I needed to take control, to break free from the cycle that had trapped me for so long. I couldn't tell my parents yet, not directly, but I needed to make a move. The first thing I did was tell my roommate, Alex, everything about my parents, the pressure, Sarah, and Emily. For the first time in a long time, I found someone who listened without judgment. Someone who saw me. It was such a small act, but it felt like a huge weight lifted off my chest. The next day, I went to campus, head spinning, trying to figure out my next steps. As I walked across the quad, I spotted Sarah. The sight of her, always the perfect one, the golden child who had never been the target of my parents' endless criticisms, sent a pang of anger through me. I had spent so many years feeling like I didn't belong in this family, and there she was, unscathed, loved, adored. It was a feeling I couldn't shake, but it wasn't just anger I felt. It was also a sense of loss. We were supposed to be a family, but somewhere along the way, we had stopped being one. I was a mess of conflicting emotions as I made my way to my next class, but there was one thing that kept replaying in my mind: freedom. I could be free. I didn't need my parents to tell me who I was. And I didn't need to keep hiding behind a smile, pretending everything was fine. That's when I realized I was scared. Scared of losing everything. But more than that, I was scared of never living my life for myself. That night, I called Emily. I hadn't talked to her in weeks. We had gone our separate ways, but something inside me couldn't stay away from her. I knew I needed her. Needed someone who understood me, who saw the person I truly was, not just the one I pretended to be. Her voice was tentative when she answered, like she wasn't sure what to expect from me. I could hear the hurt in her tone, the same hurt I felt. But I told her the truth. I apologized for pushing her away, for letting my parents control my decisions, for making her feel like she wasn't important. I was ready to fight for her, for us, even if it meant defying my parents for good. I told her that I had been living my life in fear, but not anymore. She was quiet for a long moment, and I thought maybe I had lost her for good. But then she said something that made my heart stop. "I've been waiting for you to figure that out," she whispered. "You're not broken, you just need to be you." The next few days were a whirlwind. I went home for the first time since I'd started college, fully expecting my parents to hit me with their usual demands. I wasn't prepared for how cold and indifferent they seemed. They barely looked at me when I walked through the door. Mark was at his desk and Alice was on the phone, as usual. They didn't even greet me. And then it happened. My mom handed me a piece of paper. The words "student loan payment" printed neatly at the top. It was like they were telling me, again, that I wasn't good enough, that I owed them something for everything they had given me. I felt my blood boil. It was always like this. They never saw me. They never understood me. It wasn't about the money. It was about the control. I dropped the paper on the kitchen counter, staring at it for a long moment. I didn't want their money anymore. I didn't need their approval. I was ready to leave it all behind. "Mom, Dad, I'm done," I said, the words coming out without hesitation. "I'm done living for you. I'm done pretending to be someone I'm not just to make you happy. I've been suffocating for so long, and I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm leaving." Mark's face twisted with anger. "What the hell are you talking about? You'll ruin your future if you walk away from us." Alice didn't even look up. "You're making a mistake, you know that." I swallowed hard. No. The mistake was thinking I could keep living my life like this. "I'm not going to be your puppet anymore." I grabbed my bag, ignoring their protests as I walked toward the door. I wasn't sure what I was going to do next, but I was sure of one thing: I was done being a pawn in their game. I stepped outside and breathed in the cold air like I had just emerged from a fog. It felt like freedom. It felt like the first real breath I'd taken in years. But the road ahead wasn't going to be easy. I knew that. I knew I was going to have to fight for my happiness, for my life. But for the first time, I was ready. Ready to carve out a space for myself, without fear of what anyone else thought. I wasn't going to let my past define me. I wasn't going to let them control my future. And Emily? I was going to fight for her too. Leaving home wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. I thought once I made the decision, everything would fall into place like some big, dramatic moment of liberation. But in reality, it felt like I was stepping off a cliff, unsure of whether there was a safety net below or just an endless drop. I didn't know where to go, what to do, or even how to get started. I had no plan, no backup. It was just me, the backpack on my shoulders, and a sense of freedom that felt more terrifying than exciting. It had been years since I had truly made a decision for myself. My whole life had been dictated by what others expected of me. Now, I had no one's voice in my ear but my own. I called Emily, my heart racing as the phone rang. She answered on the third ring. "Hey, what's up?" Her voice was warm, familiar, and for the first time in ages, I felt like someone cared. "I left," I said, barely able to hold back the tears. "I'm done." I walked away from them. There was a pause on the other end. Then, a sigh. "I'm so proud of you," she said softly, and it was enough to make me feel like I wasn't alone in this, that there was at least one person who believed in me. "You're gonna be okay. You've already taken the hardest step." Her words grounded me. I wasn't sure what was next, but knowing I had her support made everything a little less scary. Emily offered to let me crash at her place until I figured things out. I didn't want to impose, but she insisted. So, that's how I ended up in her small, cozy apartment a few blocks from campus. It wasn't glamorous. but it was mine in a way that had nothing to do with my parents' money or approval. It was a fresh start, no strings attached. The first few days felt like a blur. I stayed in bed most of the time, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what to do next. It felt like the weight of everything had just been lifted, but also like I was walking in uncharted territory. I had no plan, no safety net, but I was finally free to make my own choices. I had to figure out who I was without the heavy influence of my parents, without the constant reminder that I was failing to live up to their image of perfection. Emily didn't pressure me to do anything. She let me take my time, but I knew I had to start moving forward. I needed to take control of my own future. I needed to stop running away from everything and start facing it. So, I started small. I applied for jobs, anything really, to get myself on my feet. I didn't expect anything glamorous, just something that would pay the bills. One afternoon, a few days after I moved in, I got a call back from a local bookstore. They were looking for a part-time employee. I jumped at the chance. The work was simple enough, stocking shelves, helping customers, organizing the store, but it gave me a sense of purpose. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was doing something for myself, not because someone else told me to. At the same time, I started thinking about what I wanted to do with my life. I'd been so focused on surviving my family's expectations that I hadn't really thought about what I was passionate about. I had always loved design art, graphics, creating things that looked beautiful, but I'd pushed that aside because it wasn't practical in my parents' eyes. Now, though, I felt the pull again. I wanted to do something creative, something that was mine, not dictated by anyone else. I began to take some online courses in graphic design. It wasn't easy. There were nights when I felt overwhelmed, like I was in way over my head. But for the first time, I wasn't doing it because someone else told me to. I was doing it for myself. Every little victory, learning a new technique, designing my first poster, getting feedback from online forums felt like a step forward, like I was finally building something of my own. But the financial pressure was real. The bookstore didn't pay much, and I was living on a shoestring budget. I didn't want to rely on Emily for too much, even though she insisted that I didn't have to worry. I started looking for more work, picking up odd jobs where I could. I delivered food, walked dogs, did whatever I had to do to make ends meet. The stress sometimes felt suffocating. I wasn't used to struggling this much. I had been sheltered for so long, given everything I needed. But this was different. I was learning how to stand on my own 2 feet. It was hard, but it felt real. I felt like I was finally growing up. One evening, after a particularly draining day, I sat on Emily's couch, staring at my phone. I was scrolling through my parents' social media pages, as I had been doing off and on since I left. I hadn't heard from them, no calls, no texts, nothing. Part of me expected them to reach out, to apologize, to try and convince me to come back, but that never came. Instead, I saw the photos of them with Lily at some family event, all smiles, all together. It hit me hard. I had been replaced. It was like I never existed. I didn't know what I expected, maybe an apology, maybe some recognition of the pain I'd gone through, but what I saw was the same perfection they had always built. They didn't even notice that I was gone. I wasn't even a footnote in their world anymore. And you know what? That hurt. It hurt more than I thought it would. But after a while, I realized something important. They were never going to change. They were never going to see me for who I really was. And maybe, just maybe, I was better off without them. I turned off my phone and set it down on the table, letting out a long breath. It wasn't easy, but it was the truth. I couldn't keep living in their shadow. I couldn't keep hoping they'd come around. I had to keep moving forward. Emily walked into the room and, without saying anything, sat down next to me. She didn't ask me what I was thinking or why I was upset. She just sat there, her presence enough. For the first time in years, I wasn't alone. "You doing okay?" she asked softly. "Yeah," I replied, my voice cracking. "I think I am. I think I'm finally starting to figure out who I am." She smiled. "That's all anyone can do. I'm here for you, always." I didn't say anything else. I just leaned into her, knowing that for once, I wasn't doing this alone. I was starting to find my way, and it felt like I was finally heading in the right direction. It wasn't perfect, but I was moving forward, and that was enough for now. It was around 6 months after I moved out that things started to feel like they were falling into place, but I'd be lying if I said it was easy. I had moments, plenty of them, where I thought I was heading in the wrong direction, that maybe I was just running from one mess into another. But every day, no matter how small, felt like a step forward. Even when I didn't believe in myself, Emily did. And that made all the difference. The bookstore job, while not glamorous, was a grounding force. It wasn't about the money, though I won't lie, I could have used more of it. It was about feeling productive, being around people who didn't care about my past or my family. The customers came in, asked for books, and I helped them find what they were looking for. Simple, quiet. I could breathe there. I started reading more, diving into novels I'd never had time to explore before. I used the stories to escape, to imagine lives I could never lead. But there was something comforting in that. It was my small, consistent ritual, and it helped me feel less alone. I was slowly getting back into the swing of things. I kept applying for design gigs, throwing my portfolio out into the world, hoping someone would bite. Rejections came often, and it stung. Every time I read an email that said thanks but no thanks, I felt that familiar knot in my stomach. But I didn't give up. There was something in me that told me I had to keep going. I had to build something on my own, something that wasn't about meeting anyone else's expectations. Then, one night, I got a call that changed everything. It was from an art director at a local marketing agency. They had seen my portfolio online and liked what they saw. They wanted to meet with me. I remember the mix of excitement and fear that flooded me as I hung up the phone. I hadn't expected this. It was like a door had suddenly opened in front of me, one that I never even knew existed. I walked into that interview shaking, my hands clammy, my heart beating faster than I could count. I had prepared for this moment, but nothing could have prepared me for the feeling of sitting across from people who were looking at me with genuine interest. The conversation was easy. I told them my story, how I had started out with no real direction, how I had found my passion for design, and how I had worked through so many setbacks to get to this point. They seemed impressed. By the end of the interview, they offered me a position, a junior designer role. It wasn't my dream job yet, but it was a start. It was my start. I almost didn't believe it at first. I had spent so long being told I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't living up to potential. And here I was, being offered a chance to do something I loved. It wasn't just a job, it felt like validation, like someone had finally seen me for who I really was. I said yes, of course, but that moment still feels surreal to this day. Starting that job was overwhelming. The pace was fast, and the work was challenging, but it was exactly what I had been hoping for. I spent late nights refining designs, pushing myself to learn new techniques, to grow. I wasn't just doing the bare minimum anymore. I was doing everything I could to prove to myself that I was capable. Every completed project, every design that was approved, made me feel stronger. I could feel myself coming alive again, piece by piece. But even with the excitement of the new job, I wasn't entirely free from the past. My parents still hadn't contacted me, and it hurt in ways I wasn't prepared for. I had imagined that once I was on my own, they'd see the error of their ways. I thought they'd come around, but no calls came, no messages, nothing. And then one day, I got a call from Sarah. I didn't know what to expect. It had been years since we'd spoken, since that last moment when she and my parents had walked out of my life like I never mattered. But there she was, on the other end of the line, sounding different somehow. She was crying, her voice shaky as she asked if I could meet her. My stomach twisted. I didn't know what I'd feel when I saw her again. Was I angry? Was I still hurt? Part of me felt all of that, but there was also a part that just missed her. She was still my sister. We had shared a childhood, even if it hadn't been a fair one. I agreed to meet her the next day. I arrived at the coffee shop, my mind racing. Was this going to be a confrontation? Was she going to apologize? Or would she just sit there and pretend like everything was fine? When I saw her sitting at a corner table, looking like she had just gone through a storm, I froze. She looked different, older, sadder. I almost didn't recognize her. She looked up when I approached, her eyes filled with regret. "I've missed you," she said quietly. I took a seat across from her, unsure of what to say. "Why now?" I asked, my voice cracking. "After all this time?" She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I've been. I've been thinking about everything, about how I treated you, about what mom and dad did to you. I know I was part of that. I'm sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know that I see you now. It was like a punch to the gut. I wasn't prepared for this. All these years of wondering what went wrong, and here she was, finally admitting that she saw me not as the failure I had been made to feel, but as someone who deserved to be seen. I didn't know how to respond. I wasn't sure I was ready to forgive her, to forgive them. But something inside me shifted. Maybe it wasn't about forgiving them for everything. Maybe it was about finding a way to heal, to let go of the bitterness that had eaten at me for so long. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said slowly, but I'm not angry anymore, not like I was. Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. I don't expect you to. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, and I want to be a part of your life again if you'll let me. I didn't have an answer for her then, but for the first time in years, I felt a small sense of closure. Maybe it wasn't the ending I had expected, but it was a step. A small step toward healing. A small step toward finding peace with the past. And that night, after I left the coffee shop, I called Emily. She's sorry, I said quietly. She finally sees me. I'm proud of you, Emily said, her voice steady. You did the right thing. No matter what happens with her, you did the right thing. It wasn't perfect. The road ahead was still uncertain. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't running from anything. I was moving forward, step by step, one small victory at a time. Things didn't magically fix themselves after that conversation with Sarah, but somehow they started to shift. It wasn't a perfect resolution, nor was it an immediate closure, but it was a crack in the wall, a tiny window that let in light where there had once been only shadows. I didn't feel all the anger and resentment I'd carried around for years. It wasn't gone entirely, but the weight of it had lessened. The past was still there, still a part of me, but I was learning how to live with it, not let it define me. Life with Emily was steady. She had been a rock throughout everything, always there when I needed her. Our days weren't always perfect. There were times I'd spiral back into those dark places. I thought I'd escaped, moments when the pressure of building a life on my own became too much. But with Emily by my side, it didn't feel as overwhelming. She was my anchor, the person who reminded me, time and time again, that I wasn't alone. One afternoon, Emily and I were sitting on the couch, Lily curled up with a book between us. Emily had been chatting about work, and I was pretending to listen while I scrolled through job postings. I'd been with the marketing agency for nearly a year now, and while it had been an incredible learning experience, I felt the itch again, that itch to do something more, to build something of my own. The design world had opened up a whole new world for me, and now I was finally starting to understand the value of not just creating, but creating on my own terms. I'd built my career on being what others needed, but what if I could start building something that was for me? I've been thinking, I said, breaking Emily's stream of consciousness mid-sentence. She turned to look at me, her eyes warm but curious. Oh, she teased. You've got that look. What's going on? I think I want to start my own business, I said, the words feeling heavy in the air between us. It was one of those moments that could change everything. I've been thinking about it for a while, and I think it's time. Emily's expression softened, but I could see the gears turning behind her eyes. You mean like design? Start your own agency or something? Yeah, I replied. It doesn't have to be huge, but something where I can create things the way I want to create them, without anyone's approval, without anyone's expectations hanging over me. The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating. I had no idea how to run a business, how to make it successful, but for once, I wasn't worried about failure. I had been running from so much for so long that now the idea of actually facing my fears head-on felt oddly freeing. Emily didn't say anything for a long while. I could tell she was thinking. If that's what you want, then you should do it. I believe in you. Those words, I believe in you, were more than just support. They were a promise that, no matter what happened, Emily would be by my side. And in that moment, I knew that she wasn't just a part of my life, she was a part of my future. It didn't take long for me to dive in. I started working on the logistics, setting up a website, learning about marketing strategies, putting together a business plan, or at least what I thought a business plan should look like. Every step was terrifying, but it felt right. There was a part of me that was still scared to fail, still haunted by those years of not measuring up, but the fear wasn't enough to hold me back. I had come too far to let fear control me anymore. The first few months were tough. I didn't have any clients, and I was still learning the ropes of running a business. But I kept pushing. I reached out to people I knew, started networking, and slowly began building a reputation. One small project led to another. Word of mouth spread. Soon enough, I had a steady stream of work coming in. It wasn't the huge success I'd imagined, but it was mine. It was real. Around the same time, I made a conscious decision to let go of the past of my family, of my parents, of all the emotional baggage that came with them. It wasn't that I was erasing them from my life completely, but I realized that I had to stop expecting them to change. I couldn't keep waiting for them to apologize, to validate my pain. They had their own lives, their own path, and I had mine. I couldn't keep holding on to the past in the hope that they'd finally come around. I had to keep moving forward. One afternoon, as I sat in my tiny office, my first real office, which was nothing more than a small corner of the apartment I shared with Emily, I got a call from Sarah. It had been a while since we'd spoken, and I wasn't sure how to feel about it. She was quieter than usual when she spoke, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "I've been thinking," she started, her words slow, hesitant, "about everything. About what I said, about how I treated you. I'm sorry, and I want you to know that I didn't mean to hurt you. I was just trying to fit into a mold that wasn't mine, and I never realized how much I hurt you until now." Her words hung in the air, and for a moment, I didn't know what to say. It was strange. This wasn't the Sarah one remembered. This wasn't the person who had always looked down on me, the one who thought I was a failure. This was someone who was finally acknowledging that I had been hurting. Someone who was taking responsibility, even if it was years too late. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said quietly, but not with anger, just with distance. "But I appreciate you saying that. It means more than you think." She was silent for a moment, then said, "I get it. I'm not asking for anything from you. I just wanted you to know that I've changed, and I'll always be here if you ever need me." I hung up the phone feeling a strange sense of relief. Not because I was ready to welcome her back into my life right then, but because I realized I didn't have to carry the weight of the past anymore. I didn't need her validation, her apology, or my parents' approval. I had my life now. And it was mine to shape, no matter what anyone else thought. Emily and I were stronger than ever. We had become a team in every sense of the word, and I couldn't imagine going through this journey without her. We had our ups and downs, but we worked through everything together. It wasn't perfect, nothing ever is, but it was ours, and it was enough. It took years for me to finally understand that it wasn't about fixing my past. It was about learning how to live in the present, how to move forward without looking back. I wasn't the same person I had been when I walked out of my parents' house. I wasn't the same person who had tried so hard to be someone I wasn't. I was stronger, more confident. And for the first time, I truly felt like I was living for me. Story 2, my wife wanted us to have an open marriage, but she deeply regretted it when she saw her sisters flirting with me. Mark, I'm not happy. I want a divorce. When Susan said those words, I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me. I was shocked, yes, but not completely blindsided. After nearly 18 years of marriage, I had noticed her confiding more and more in her friend Rachel, who fancied herself a marriage expert. Rachel's expertise came from having 4 divorces of her own. "Mark, did you hear me?" I said. "I want a divorce." "Yes, Susan, I heard you," I replied, trying to stay calm. "This is serious, and I don't want to respond impulsively. I've always believed I've been a loving husband and a dedicated father. You've never mentioned any problems in our intimacy, so I'm blindsided by this. But if our marriage is making you unhappy, I won't stand in the way of your happiness. It hurts, but I'll support your decision to divorce. Can you tell me? Is this something new, or has it been building for a while?" Susan's response was cold. "Yes, it's been building. I need space, time to explore new opportunities, meet new people. Legally, we have to be separated for 60 days after signing the papers. Who knows? I might change my mind, and decide not to go through with the divorce. I took a moment to process her words. I've heard that during the 60-day separation, we're free to date others without it being considered cheating, but we both have to agree to stop the divorce. Either one of us can proceed without the other's consent. Susan looked taken aback, not realizing I had the same freedom. I thought that if I filed first, it would be my choice to continue or stop the divorce. I shook my head. That's not fair, Susan. I'll file too, so we're on equal footing. Does that sound reasonable? Susan hesitated. I suppose. Are you saying you want a divorce too? I thought I was a good husband, father, and partner. I'm not asking for a divorce, but I won't block your future. You've been a great wife and mother. But you wanting more shows, I've fallen short. Do you have a lawyer already? No, I haven't gotten the documents yet. I plan to ask Frank Walters. He handled all of Rachel's divorces. Rachel, again? I thought I'll probably ask my cousin Karen to handle my side. I know you don't like her, but she's a tough, kind-hearted lawyer who fights hard for her clients. After a few drinks at the last family gathering, she offered to represent me for free if I ever needed a divorce lawyer. Wow, Susan muttered. So what now? Let's use the next 2 weeks to prepare. We'll start our separation at the beginning of next month. Why do we need to prepare before the separation? Susan asked, confusion in her eyes. I explained the separation is to see what life after divorce might be like, to help us decide if it's what we really want. It should be a trial period for post-divorce life so we don't end up in a messy situation later. Does that make sense? I guess I hadn't thought about it that way, Susan admitted. Let's go to the kitchen, grab a notepad, and list everything we need to do. I'll make some coffee. I suggested leaving the bed when Susan joined me in the kitchen. The coffee was already brewing and I was jotting down notes. All right, there's a lot to consider. We should start by talking about the kids. What do you mean? Susan asked, her tone wary. We need to explain what's happening to them. Make sure we give them the same message and reassure them. It's not their fault, I said. Susan looked concerned. Breaking the news to our daughters will be hard. They might not take it well. Do we have to tell them right away? Can't we wait out the 60 days and maybe avoid telling them if things change? I disagreed. We need a plan for their inevitable questions about the separation. I think you should stay in the house during the separation to keep things normal for them. We can still spend time together, sometimes. Susan was skeptical. But what about our social lives? What if one of us wants to go out and the other doesn't? It could lead to resentment. We need to experience post-divorce life properly. How will the kids react if they see us with other people? We'll need to tell our extended family and friends too, to avoid any misunderstandings or rumors about infidelity. It's crucial to be consistent in our message and show our love for them, I insisted. Professional counseling might help, but I believe our daughters are strong enough to adapt. I tried to lighten the mood. Who knows? They might gain more grandparents from our new partners, which means more gifts for special occasions. But we'll have to coordinate events like birthdays and holidays carefully. Susan sighed, still looking doubtful but resigned. All right, let's start planning. I pointed out to Susan the importance of keeping our new relationships discreet. I suggested that if either of us started seeing someone else, it would be more appropriate to meet them elsewhere rather than bringing them home while the other parent was around, the kids. We then talked about the financial implications of maintaining 2 separate households, acknowledging that our expenses would increase significantly. I explained that we'd both need to adjust to managing and covering all our expenses independently. I mentioned that we'd have to divide our joint assets evenly, which would mean closing joint accounts and setting up child support arrangements. Understood, Susan said, looking stunned. There's so much to address before the first day of separation. I'll look into renting an apartment closer to my workplace. I continued. That way the girls will have a bed when they stay over on the nights I have visitation. Typically, the non-resident parent gets to see the kids every weekend and every other major holiday unless we agree otherwise. Susan seemed surprised by my preparedness. I thought you'd be dating more frequently, she noted. You and the girls always have so much fun together. I'll stay involved in their lives as much as possible, I assured her. But you'll need to be ready to take on some of the responsibilities I currently handle. Weeknight visits might be tricky because of school commitments. You might also need to help your new partner's children with their activities, just like I would if I met someone. We then discussed logistical challenges like managing belongings in 2 locations and transportation issues, especially if I don't live on the bus route for their school, which could disrupt their routine. This isn't unfolding, as Rachel assured, Susan mused. She said you would relent at the mention of divorce, offering to maintain everything you do for the family while allowing me to date others. I'm losing control of the situation rapidly. I could see she was struggling. I'm stunned. Mark, I need to get some rest. We'll reconvene tomorrow. I'm going back to bed. Sorry, honey, but I need to jot down a few more things before I turn in. You know how my mind works. The more groundwork we lay now, the easier it will be. Good night. Susan barely slept that night. She needed to speak to Rachel and update her on my unexpected response. Rachel would know the next steps. This assurance allowed her to eventually drift off. When she woke up, she immediately noticed I wasn't in bed. Oh my God. This fool stayed up all night working on the divorce checklist, she thought. But when she entered the kitchen, I wasn't there. Only a notepad lay on the table. She peered into the guest bedroom and found me sound asleep. Returning to the kitchen, she started making breakfast. As everything cooked, she glanced at the notepad under the heading, Liabilities to Change. I had listed tasks like adjusting the mortgage, homeowner's insurance, utilities, car payments, health insurance, and more. This was on top of the banking changes we had discussed the night before. The following page detailed my anticipated expenses related to my stay in the apartment and a projected budget indicating the amount of child support Susan would need to maintain her and the girl's current lifestyle. The projections indicated a shortfall of several hundred each month. I had also outlined strategies to cut costs, like giving up my frequent visits to diners and coffee shops, a prospect that seemed to amuse her. She added her own expenses to the list, such as her gym membership, participation in a women's group, and dining out more than once a week. I even included some of the children's expenses, detailing fees for extracurricular activities, uniforms, and other essentials. On another page, I listed tasks Susan would need to handle, including refueling the car, regular maintenance, arranging for a mechanic or plumber when needed, calling for heating and air conditioning repairs, lawn care, car washing, grocery shopping, and so forth. She set the notepad aside, frustrated. Why isn't Mark behaving as he should and giving me what I want? I need to call Rachel before Mark wakes up. Susan dialed Rachel, keeping her voice low. Hello, Rachel? It's Susan. We have to keep our voices down because Mark is sleeping nearby. How did it go last night? Rachel's voice conveyed excitement, anticipating a positive update. Instead of asking how he could improve to prevent me from divorcing him, he agreed to the divorce and started listing all the tasks he'd currently handle that I'd have to take on. Mark intends to rent an apartment and only take care of the girls on weekends. He insists we truly separate and behave as if we're divorced, to decide if we want to proceed after 60 days. He doesn't seem genuinely frightened by the prospect of divorce. What should I do? Listen, foolish girl, Rachel snapped. He's trying to manipulate you. He's bluffing. There's no way he'll actually sign any papers. It's a shame. He feels the need to enumerate all the small things he does to make you feel more dependent on him than he is on you. Remember, you control the kids and what happens between your legs. Those are the 2 things that will keep him in line. It's all talk on his part. Don't worry. Before long, you and Brian will be enjoying each other, and you'll still have a husband and a home. I hope you're correct. And Brian is worth the trouble. Well, Mark hasn't taken any action yet. I'll remain resolute until I see his next move. Thank you, Rachel. He's getting up. I have to go. Hey, Mark, would you like some coffee? Susan asked nervously as I shuffled over to the coffee pot. I mentioned that drinking coffee late at night wasn't wise. I hardly slept last night. Why didn't you join me in bed? Well, I went for a walk, but I didn't trust myself, I admitted. What do you mean, sweetheart? She asked, confused. I saw you sleeping, undressed, and I became quite aroused. You're still the most beautiful woman I know, but I'm hesitant. I fear that if we were to make love, it would only be out of pity to alleviate my pain over the divorce proposal. I wasn't sure I could resist. Darling, we're still married. I belong to you and no one else. At least until we separate. Can't we act like husband and wife until then? I'm afraid not. I'm more convinced than ever that we need to start acting like we're separated immediately. Even though the official split won't start until the first of the month. When you said you were unhappy, it essentially began then. It'll be difficult for me, but I genuinely want to see you happy, even if I no longer play a significant role in your life. Susan tried to reassure me. Our separation doesn't necessarily mean we have to pursue a divorce. Just relax and give me some time to discover myself. I'm confident we can remain married and maybe even strengthen our bond. I expressed my doubt. I'll take the day off to handle the division of our affairs. David will oversee the maintenance crews today. We need to sort out our finances and accounts as soon as possible. Don't be late for work. I'll prepare breakfast for the children and take them to school later at the office. Michael, a charming colleague, came by to flirt with Susan. She felt anxious, but agreed to discuss enjoying music together at a later time. Her thoughts shifted from our separation to memories of her carnal moments with Michael in the elevator. When Susan returned home from work, she noticed signs that I had been there during the day. This sight brought her some relief, and she felt emotionally prepared to confront the financial matters we had discussed. It seemed like she was thinking, I have 60 days to explore while remaining married, and then I'll try to figure out how to engage in a relationship with Michael without getting caught. Sitting at the kitchen table, she reviewed her notebook once more. I had added a few more items to the list. She also noticed a new list titled Possible Women to Date. It consisted of 2 columns, women who had already expressed interest, and women. I'd like to know if they are interested. The names in the first column startled her, especially when she saw her sister Laura's name. Susan immediately dialed Laura's number. "Hello, Laura, how are you? How dare you attempt to steal my husband?" Susan yelled. "Hey, slow down, girl. What's this about?" Laura asked, confused. "Mark made a list of women who told him they wanted to date him, and your name is on it." I'm not sure about the list, but I once mentioned to him, after I had a bit too much to drink, that if he ever wised up and left your foolish, unappreciative self, I'd be interested in taking your place. Wait, what's happening? Is Mark presenting you a list of women interested in him? Are you implying there's trouble in paradise? Did you catch him, or did he catch you with someone else? That's beside the point. I simply informed him that I needed some space, some time to myself to explore new relationships. Yeah, you're looking for something on the side. Who is it? Or are there multiple? Laura cut her off. No, I haven't been involved with anyone yet. Mark and I are just going through the 60-day separation, and then we'll decide if we want to remain married or not. All right, Laura said, her tone accusatory. You're obviously looking for someone specific, and if you want to be carnal with Mark, there's nothing you can do about it. I'll be pursuing Mark myself once you're legally separated. He deserves better. Susan defended her decision. It was my initiative to separate, even though I praised him as a husband and provider. Laura criticized her actions. You're foolish and naive. Mark is a great provider, husband, father, and lover. Notify me as soon as you're free from the marriage. Laura ended the call. Susan tried to settle her nerves, but it didn't help. She glanced at the list of women again. Lauren. Mark, secretary, was on the list. A stunningly beautiful single mother, nearly 15 years younger than him. The thought of her husband dating someone so young was unsettling. There were 2 other women, one of whom was married, as denoted by the M next to her name. The remaining names belonged to women who worked alongside Mark, some of whom Susan recognized from their local area. Despite holding a degree in psychology, Mark had worked as a laborer during college and maintained his affinity for the trade, growing his business to encompass 3 teams. Susan suspected he was evaluating these women's plumbing skills, as well as the state of their hearts. The 3 unnamed women on the list were simply labeled as waitress at diner, barista at coffee shop, and clerk at supermarket. She wondered how many other women found him as appealing as Laura did. She hadn't anticipated him dating while they were apart, but now she pondered if he already had someone else in mind. Mark entered the house and noticed Susan flipping through the notebook. He had a hunch about the upcoming conversation. Looks like you wasted no time finding a replacement for me, my own sister of all people. How could you? Susan retorted. I was merely catching up with your progress and finding a boyfriend, Mark replied. What do you mean? I don't have a boyfriend. I just want to explore some new relationships, Susan clarified. What about Michael Hayes? Mark inquired. How do you know about that? Susan questioned Michael Hayes. What's your plan today? I bumped into Megan, your boss's secretary, at the supermarket during lunch break. She's a notorious gossip. Don't trust everything she says. Susan couldn't resist asking. What did she say? Megan mentioned that you're pretty close with one of our new partners, Michael Hayes. Apparently, he visits your office often, and you two have lunch together every day. Considering our company's strict policy against office fraternization, I asked what was going on. I said, watching her closely. Michael is just an old college friend. Susan responded quickly. We hang out sometimes. That's all. Well, from what Megan said, it sounded like he might be one of the men you're considering during our separation. I probed further. Michael is just a friend. We've barely done anything. Just talked. He's always been nice to me, even on my worst days, Susan admitted, her eyes shifting slightly. Anything more? I pressed, sensing there was more to the story. Susan hesitated, her expression revealing a hint of guilt. Did you do anything that would upset his wife? I continued. Wife? He's not married. Who told you that? She exclaimed. I found out on his Facebook page, I replied. Is this Michael Hayes we're talking about? Yes, but he never mentioned a wife, she said, looking puzzled. His profile says he's married to Victoria and has 2 sons, I revealed. It was updated just 3 days ago, and his wife's post suggests they're still very much together. Susan looked shocked. I had no idea he was married. I would never do anything to break up a marriage. Seems like you're okay with breaking up our own marriage, though. I shot back, feeling a pang of bitterness. There was a heavy silence as Susan realized she was cornered. Michael was the main reason she was contemplating ending things with me, but she couldn't admit that now. Well, he was just one of several men I might consider dating. I can make a list, just like you, she deflected. Oh my God, I just remembered something crucial. If we decide to stay married after the separation, we need to exchange medical reports to ensure we're both free of sexually transmitted diseases. I interjected. You're being ridiculous, Susan snapped. It's just a precaution. I wasn't really planning on dating anyone, especially since it's only for 60 days. But if I feel the urge, I can find someone. I'm sure you'd want to feel safe too. It's not just about you, it's about who you're with and who they've been with. I explained calmly. Fine. Whatever, she muttered. So what's next on your to-do list? Well, I've got a lot on my plate, starting with sorting out our finances and accounts. Dealing with the mortgage, utilities, and the like will be next. Oh, I found a potential apartment closer to my workplace. Lauren, my secretary, works as a night manager at the Royal Arms. They have a 2-bedroom unit available. And if I become an apartment maintenance specialist, I could get a 50% discount on rent. That means more money for you and the kids. You haven't signed the lease yet, have you? We have 60 days. Maybe you won't need to move out, Susan suggested, trying to keep her voice steady. No, I haven't finalized the lease yet. Lauren mentioned they typically don't do month-to-month rentals, but she might make an exception for 60 days. When she found out about the divorce, she expressed interest in me. I was surprised, given the age gap and all. I had no clue she found me attractive. I declined politely, citing workplace rules against employees and managers having personal relationships. She suggested finding another job if that was the issue. That's why I mentioned it on the list, I explained. Susan was fuming inside, but held her tongue without waiting for her response. I continued. Another piece of news you might appreciate. I booked 2 tickets for a 7-day Florida vacation. It was supposed to be a surprise for our 18th anniversary. Susan's demeanor shifted instantly. Florida. Oh, Mark, you know how much I've always wanted to go there? This is amazing. I can't wait to relax on the beach and swim in the ocean. Thank you. Thank you. But my expression remained serious. We won't be going to Florida together. When you mentioned divorce, I realized we might not make it to our 18th anniversary. I tried to cancel and get a refund, but it was too late. They only offered a $20 refund. I realized the trip to Florida is more your dream than mine, so I had them change the tickets for you and a guest. It could be a great start to your new relationship if you offer your new man an all-expenses-paid trip to Florida. But Mark, I wanted to go to Florida with you. We could postpone the separation. In fact, I'm considering calling off the whole thing. Now that I've had time to reflect, I'm not as unhappy as I thought. Susan pleaded. I'm sorry. I've thought about this a lot. I don't believe I could be content, knowing the possibility of divorce hangs over us. Even if you retract the divorce now, you can't erase what you said, and I can't erase the images in my mind of what you and Michael might have done. It'll likely proceed with the divorce, regardless of your decision. Though I can't fathom life without you, and being only a part-time father to my girls. With that, I retreated to the guest bedroom upstairs. Susan was devastated and knew only one person to turn to Rachel. She called her immediately. Hello, Susan. What's wrong? Rachel asked. Everything has gone wrong. Mark found an apartment, and his secretary is already flirting with him. Even my sister wants to date him. The worst part is, he had tickets to Florida for our anniversary and gave them to me to use. But he won't go. He said I could use them to take my new boyfriend. What do I do now? Rachel let out a chuckle. What's the problem? You and Michael can have a blast in the sun. Fun, adventure, and some amazing lovemaking. No, I found out Michael is married and his wife and kids are moving here soon. I can't go to Florida with him. I want to go with Mark. Hold on a second, Rachel interjected. I think I just realized what's going on. Wow. Mark is more cunning than I gave him credit for. He claims he booked the trip ages ago, but it was just a ploy to manipulate you into feeling guilty and stopping the divorce proceedings. Don't worry. With your looks and charm, you'll find boyfriends as good as, if not better than, Michael in no time, all while keeping your marriage and family intact. Oh my goodness. I never imagined he could be so deceitful. He'll pay for this. Thank you. Rachel, I was on the verge of giving up, but now I'm more determined than ever. He's going to regret this dearly. Let's chat later. When I came downstairs with a small suitcase, Susan glared at me. So you're trying to make it look like you're already moving out? No worries. Goodbye and good riddance. Actually, I was just taking a few things to the apartment to avoid carrying too much at once and startling the girls. Lauren mentioned I could move some stuff in before the 1st, since the apartment is empty anyway, I explained. Your attitude seems different from earlier. Let me guess. You were talking to your marriage guru Rachel again. She's quite the expert at divorce, isn't she? Don't try to provoke me by insulting Rachel. She's on my side. She saw right through your Florida ticket scheme. You fabricated that tale just to coerce me into giving up everything. Nice try, but I still want a divorce and can't wait to finalize it. There are plenty of guys out there who desire me and are willing to meet my needs. Susan snapped. You're absolutely right, especially about the attention you'll get from other guys. I have no doubt you'll have numerous offers once they realize you're available. I've always considered myself incredibly fortunate to have such a stunning woman like you, a fantastic partner in raising our children, and until recently, a faithful wife and lover. You're wrong about the Florida trip, and I can prove it. Just give Helen Jones at Sunshine Travel Agency a call. I'll dial her now. I pulled out my phone and dialed. Hi, Helen. It's Mark Wilson. My wife is on speakerphone, so you can fill her in on the details about the trip. She has a few questions. Of course. Mark, Helen responded. I'm really sorry you won't be able to go. It seems like you were genuinely looking forward to surprising your wife and enjoying your vacation. What specifics do you need? Miss S. Wilson, Susan demanded. Could you please outline exactly what's included in this trip? Certainly. This is our 7-day excursion, spanning 2 locations. It covers accommodations at our top-rated hotels, meals, transportation, hula lessons, luau dinners, traditional tiki performances, opportunities for surfing, swimming, and dancing, all set in a romantic atmosphere. Many couples have found it to be a transformative experience for their marriage. When did my husband initially arrange this trip? Susan asked. Certain this would expose my deception. Let me check, Helen said, pausing for a moment. According to our records, he inquired about it approximately 3 months ago, then finalized his selection for this specific trip 2 months ago, with payment made 2 weeks thereafter. Yesterday, he contacted us to cancel the booking, resulting in a $20 refund. I was surprised when he suggested that you could still go and find another companion. That says a lot about the kind of husband he is. You're quite fortunate. Any other inquiries? No further questions. I'll get back to you soon with the name, Susan replied, trying to process the information. After the call ended, she tried to anticipate Rachel's response. "You think you've outsmarted me once more, don't you? You and Helen conspired to fabricate this Florida trip story before I even mentioned divorce." "Well, I've caught on," she said, feeling a twisted sense of pride in her deduction. I let out a heavy sigh. "You should talk to your parents. What do my parents have to do with this?" she snapped. "Who do you think will look after the girls while we're away?" I asked. "Fine, let's call them," Susan responded. Caught off guard. "No need to rush into it, dear. I'm already dialing," I stated. "Mark, wait." But her mother answered the call, recognizing the number. "Susan, how are the girls?" "Glad you called." "Hi, Mark," her mother said. "Hi, Mom," Susan greeted hesitantly. "Mom, this is Mark. We're on speakerphone." "Hold on, let me get Dad, too," she said. In the background, we heard her father's voice. "Frank, it's Mark and Susan. Pick up Honey. What's going on, guys?" Frank joined the conversation. When Susan remained silent, I spoke up. "Susan knows now, so no need to keep it a secret. We're sorry I can't go, but I didn't mention why when I called earlier. I hope it's not health-related. When you called this morning and said we wouldn't babysit the girls for your Florida trip, we were disappointed. We were looking forward to having them with us for 7 days. And we felt bad for Susan that you couldn't go with her. We know how much she wants to go, but she'd rather go with you than anyone else. Have you decided who to take, Susan?" "It'll be tough for whoever stays," her father commented. "No, Mom, I haven't decided yet." "How long ago did Mark discuss the Florida trip with you?" she asked, sensing a trap. "I'm not sure." "Frank, do you remember? It was around New Year's, wasn't it?" her father replied. "Almost sure, 2 or 3 months ago. He mentioned it early so we could stock up on snacks. These two can eat anything and never gain weight." Her mother said Mark. Susan's mother interjected, concerned. "Is everything okay with Susan? Why are you asking? When Mark talked to us? Did something happen between you two? Oh God, did you break up?" "No, Mom, not exactly. We decided we needed some space, some time apart to recharge our marriage and maybe reconcile." Susan clarified, "Dear, I'm not going to lie to your parents. They've always been honest with me." "I interjected, Mom," Susan began. "I didn't mean to cause alarm. What I meant was that the first step in the divorce process is a 60-day separation. I hope this time will help me find myself, explore new opportunities, and better myself so I can be a better wife and mother," Susan explained. "And that's coming from me, Mom." Frank's voice boomed. "I know when I'm being fed a line. Susan, do you have a boyfriend on the side?" "No, Dad, not at all." Susan denied, her voice shaking. "I thought about stepping in, but decided against it." Frank continued, his wife's sobs echoing in the background. "I can't believe you could do something like this. We raised you better. I'm so disappointed. Don't expect us to welcome your new man with open arms, Susan. We're so sorry, Mark. At least promise us you'll let us see our grandchildren after the divorce." As Susan's tears intensified, she interrupted. "Mark has blown this whole thing out of proportion. I take my words back. No divorce, no separation. I'll talk to you later when everything calms down." Seeing Susan in such distress, I said, "You need to pull yourself together. The girls will be home soon." I grabbed my suitcase and headed toward the door. "Where are you going? Didn't you hear?" "I don't want a divorce." "You don't have to go anywhere," she pleaded. "You decided on divorce without consulting me. Now you think you can change it all back just because things aren't going your way? You don't seem to understand that I have a voice in this too. After what I've learned about you over the past week, I'm not sure giving up on the divorce is a good idea. I'll stay in the apartment tonight. Mark, please don't go. I am sorry. You said it was fine before I brought up this nonsense about wanting a divorce. Can we just move past it and return to how things were? You claimed you were happy. I was happy too, but I can't forget how you admitted to being unhappy and planning to have an affair with Michael. Like I said, you've already committed infidelity. Karen mentioned she could easily draft the divorce papers, since their standard terms might even serve them tomorrow. I won't sign them, Susan retorted sharply. That doesn't matter. All Karen needs to do is ensure you're officially served. She might do it at your workplace, perhaps even in front of Michael. We could claim alienation of affection. I could even involve your boss for violating company policy. But that's too far. I need you to be able to care for the girls after the divorce. I know I'll speak to Michael's wife. That should suffice for payback. Why are you so harsh? I love you, and you love me. Is there anything I can do to make things right? You said divorce would be tough on both of us. Don't you want to avoid this pain? I promise never to bring up this divorce mess again. Please stay and let's work it out. Susan pleaded tearfully. I remained silent, letting her words sink in. Susan felt a glimmer of hope. I pledged to be the best wife in the world. I won't look at another man. I've given you nearly 18 years of a strong marriage, 2 wonderful children, and supported your business, even when it meant you came home late and dirty. I'm so proud of your success. Everyone makes mistakes. Please give me one more chance, please, she implored. Finally, I responded, here's what we'll do. I'll take my suitcase and sleeping bag to the apartment tonight. I want you to write down a few things. Your words and actions have hurt me deeply. If your responses meet my expectation, I'll consider calling off, or at least delaying the divorce. I'll return by 7. Maybe send the kids to your parents or friends so we can speak freely. Yes, yes. Thank you. What should I write? She asked eagerly. First, I expect an apology for starting this whole situation. Not just an apology. Beg for my forgiveness. Second, instruct Michael to stop contacting you. If he doesn't comply, warn him that I can take legal action against him and your company. Third list. All the reasons why I should consider staying married to you. Finally, call Rachel and tell her you never want to speak to her again. This is non-negotiable. If I ever hear about Rachel's input again, I will leave immediately. Do you understand? Yes, dear. I understand. I'll do everything and be ready by 7. Good. See you at 7. I grabbed my suitcase and left. Susan focused on the final task, mentally rehearsing her words to Rachel. She dialed Rachel and said, listening to you is my worst mistake. Because of you, I nearly lost everything dear to me. Do not contact me via call, text, email, or even think of me. If our paths cross in public, steer clear or I won't be responsible for my actions. Feeling a surprising sense of relief after confronting Rachel, Susan dialed Michael and relayed my instructions. She recounted his desperate plea to meet one last time, but she shut him down, resorting to insults and accusations of him being inadequate. She warned him that she would involve his wife if he continued causing trouble. To her surprise, listing reasons why I should stay married turned out to be the easiest task. Liberated from desiring more than what she had with me, Susan reflected on the joys we shared. She compiled an entire list, hopeful that it would impress me. She expressed remorse for the divorce ruse, acknowledging how foolish and self-centered she had been. As 7 approached, Susan felt prepared and hopeful. But when the hour struck and I hadn't returned, worry crept in. 5 minutes later, I reappeared without my luggage, my expression unchanged. Susan tried to remain composed as she handed me her responses. Here are my answers. I hope you reconsider. I read through the list for a long time, tears welling up in my eyes. Seeing me cry, Susan began to weep too, thinking this might be a hopeful sign. Susan, this is really impressive, I said, my voice shaking. Susan's heart leaped as she rose to embrace me, but I gestured for her to stay seated. Your effort is commendable, but I'm not sure you understand the extent of the pain you've caused me. I fear I must proceed with the divorce, I explained. Susan was devastated. It felt as if her heart had been shattered. Collapsing to the floor, she sobbed uncontrollably, her grief overwhelming. I've ruined my family's life. I'm the worst person alive. I don't deserve to live. How could I have been so foolish? She wailed. I knelt beside her, whispering, now you understand how I felt. As Susan continued to cry, I approached the door but paused, glancing back at her. During our separation, are we allowed to see other people? Through her tears, Susan struggled to speak. If dating others is permitted, what are your plans for Friday night? Would you like to have dinner and catch a movie? I asked. You're asking me out on a date? Susan exclaimed, wiping her tears. Yes. I believe our old relationship has changed, but perhaps we can start anew, I suggested with renewed hope. Susan rushed toward me. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes, she cried.